Shalom, welcome to the Jewish View. My name is Rabbi Nachman Simon with the Chabad House of Delmar, together with my co-host Mark Ronich of Statewide News Service, jbiztechphilly.com. And as you can see right here, columnist for the Jewish Press.
Right, Rabbi, I'm having a wonderful time with all three assignments, and my column in the Jewish Press is called Albany Beat, and I write about how government relates to the Jewish community, or doesn't, as the case may be.
All right.
And our guest today is Pedro Perez. Welcome to the Jewish View, Pedro.
I'm honored to be here. Thank you for having me.
He's the executive director of My Brothers and Sisters Keeper.
Okay.
So
well, that's a biblical name, Perez, and you have a biblical phrase right there, from the beginning. You belong on the Jewish View.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. And the journey that we're on is in fact biblical from the perspective of where we are trying to make sure that humanity continues to respect each other, and ensuring that our children grow up with a sense of awe about things that are bigger and greater than themselves, and also fulfill their own destiny.
Yeah, just exactly. Let's start from the beginning. What is it? You know, it sounds nice, of course, Brothers Keeper and Sisters Keeper, but exactly what is your organization?
It began in 2014. Unfortunately, it began with a tragedy. The tragedy was that Trayvon Martin was killed. President Obama immediately after that got on the bully pulpit and said, you know, that could have been me if I wore a hoodie. It could have been my son if I had had a son.
Well, he said Trayvon Martin could have been my son.
Yeah.
Because he looked like him.
Yeah,
a little
yes,
bit, right?
yes.
They had similar
yes.
features. Yeah.
So it's very similar, but by extension, he was talking about all black and brown children, and the potentiality and the tragedy that is occurring across the nation, in which many black and brown children are being murdered, are dying at the hands both of themselves because of crime. And this is not unique to this particular community. You know, people usually commit crimes where they live, and so they don't usually venture out. So it's not about black on black crime or brown on brown crime or white on white crime, because the fact of the matter is that exists in every community.
Sure.
The other issue was that, of course, they were being, this notion of being targeted by police because of implicit bias and things of that nature. And he wanted to change that dialogue. He wanted to change that trajectory of these children. He wanted to change the school-to-prison pipeline initiative. And so he challenged the entire nation using the biblical phrase, be your brother's keeper, in essence, that sentiment, that thought. Here in Albany, immediately upon hearing that, we said yes, but we took it a step further, because we said we have to include 51% of the population that isn't being said at the moment, isn't being mentioned at the moment, which was sisters. Because young girls, teenage girls and young women that are black and brown are also suffering the same inequities, the same discriminations, the same level of violence, and sometimes even more, on top of which they're also facing, we frankly live in an era in which misogyny is rampant, in which paternalism is rampant. I mean, girls now can graduate out of college if they're so lucky as to get into college, and will only make $79 for every dollar their male counterpart will make. So there's a thought, and that there is some analysis that has shown that some women have made some greater advances, but there still exists a glass ceiling in our nation. And so we thought, particularly for women of color, that we needed to include sisters in it. And so here in Albany, one of only a few cities that has decided to do that, we have included them as our responsibility.
Okay. So I have to ask you this question. Brothers and sisters, on the brochure, and I mean this not to be picky, but in the brochure it has an apostrophe on brothers, an apostrophe on sisters, meaning possessive.
Right.
But it should be just plural, shouldn't it be?
No, because the thought...
Maybe show the picture.
You can show the brochure. The thought is that we are and they are our keepers. That this is a possessor. They're possessing us. But we're supposed to be responsible for them. So let's consider this. Imagine if a child were able to take an entrepreneurial approach to their own education, to their own advancement in society. They would need us as guides. And so we are their keepers, not from the sense that we're guiding, that we're in control of their destiny in terms of dictating what that destiny is, but as their navigator, as their assistant, as their guide through the maze of complexities that this society now offers and challenges our young people with. We're the ones that are going to help them break down their barriers. So they're possessing us. That is the possessive. The brother and the sister individually, because we're dealing with each child individually, because each child has to determine for themselves, with our help, what is best for them.
So that's why it's not plural possessive.
Right, that's why it's not plural possessive.
Even because you're dealing with the one each individual, because I thought that would be the alternative.
Yeah, no,
Would be plural
we're
possessive, and
no,
then you
yes,
have
it could be.
apostrophe.
Yes, it could
So-
be.
But it says a lot. I mean, that's why grammar is grammar, because
Right.
it just
Yes.
sends the message. I'm not trying to be picky.
Oh, no, you're not being picky. That's a
Okay.
very good point, and I understand it completely, and that's why I explained it the way I explained it.
People will probably, the audience, the people watching were probably rolling their eyes that I was picking on something.
Oh,
but
no,
I
well, they
didn't mean
should-
to,
they
and
should
that's
not.
why I was bringing that up.
Yeah, they
You say Albany, is this in every city?
No.
Because Albany is a major city, but it's not the biggest city. I mean, it's, what number of population are we?
What, in the county or the
In
city?
the whole Albany, in the
Well-
nation, I mean, 100,000 people. I mean, whatever, I'm just saying, there's a lot more
Albany County
cities.
has 300,000 and Albany City has 90,000.
About
Colony
90,000.
has about 90,000.
Right, right. So in
Saying
answer
that
to your,
Albany,
in answer to your
is it around
question,
the country, that's.
there are about 250 communities around the country that have
that's a lot.
accepted My Brother's Keeper. My Brothers and Sisters Keeper is a rather rare initiative within that context,
Sure,
within that
sure,
cohort.
sure.
Within the state of New York, you have My Brother's Keeper in New York City. You have it also the state. For the first time, New York State is one of the only states through the Regents entity to adopt My Brother Keepers initiative. In fact, they've just issued some grants, and the city of Albany has been able to garner some of those grants for educational purposes to help the city's school district move forward with educational initiatives.
So in the brochure, you have, are you having trouble finding a job? Do you struggle in school? Would you like to find a job with better or good pay?
Yes.
So that's one of your focal points is.
There's a
employment?
5-point initiative.
Okay, tell us what
Right,
that is.
so the 5 goals are, the first goal is our children coming to school ready to learn, meaning our 3rd graders, 4th graders ready to come into kindergarten prepared holistically.
A third graders?
Third grader, I mean, third,
Third-
3-year-olds and
3-year-olds.
4-year-olds
Okay,
rather.
thank you. Okay.
The 3rd graders are in this, one of the goals, that's why I'm
Okay,
conflating the
okay,
two.
okay.
So 3-year-olds and 4-year-olds, are they coming into kindergarten ready to learn? And so we want to make sure that's one of the goals. Now, Albany Promise is going to tackle some of those things, and we're partners with Albany Promise.
Well, of course they're not ready. We're
Well,
never
can
ready.
they be ready?
Can
And-
they be?
And some are ready. Some are ready to learn.
Sometimes, in kindergarten, the problem is sometimes they're not emotionally ready.
Well, I said holistically, if you were listening.
Listening, if I was listening.
Right. So
Okay.
I said holistically, which includes, social emotional readiness.
Yes.
As well, not just academic readiness to the ABCs. In fact, social emotional readiness is actually more important in some
Yes.
instances.
Yes.
Because can they, are they prepared in terms of their own discipline and their own self-awareness to sit and listen to a teacher and to cooperate with their classmates? So that's one. The second goal are 3rd graders. That's where I conflated the two.
fine.
Our 3rd graders reading and writing at least at the 3rd grade level, doing mathematics at least at the 3rd grade level, and doing science at least at the 3rd grade level, if not higher. Our high schoolers ready to graduate, go to college, go to workforce readiness, go to an entrepreneurial experience. Are they ready to move on with their lives to become young adults that are productive in this society? Are we providing second chances to those who do not get to have that opportunity? For some reason or another, get left behind, and I don't mean that in terms of school, but somehow they get lost. There's been a recent report done in multiple cities, not just the city of Albany, but in many cities where suspension rates are much higher for black and brown children. And why? And so there's some conversation about implicit bias and things of that nature. So we want to make sure that we don't lose those children, that we bring them on board. These are called opportunity youth that are ready, or either are already lost or are at risk of being lost, and we want to make sure we capture them. And then, of course, there is the notion of reducing violence in our communities across the board, so that another Trayvon Martin does not happen. And so those are the goals that we're facing. The one question there is about one of the goals, and we're asking young people themselves, because one of the things we wanted to make sure that we did was we had direct conversations with people. We didn't want to come in thinking we knew the answers. We didn't want to come in thinking that as academics or as police officers or as social workers or anyone else, as adults, that we know what these young people are thinking and feeling and what they believe are their challenges and what they believe are their successes. We want to approach young people from a position of strength. What are their strengths? Let's maximize their strengths. Let's not approach them from a sense of deficit. Let's work with them as productive, young, strong individuals that have their own ideas. And you'd be surprised if we listen to young people, they're very astute. They know what's going on and they know what they want. They merely want someone to help guide them through the maze that is growing up as a member of this society.
But it's interesting, I give you kudos to say the very least about what you're doing. I think it's so, so important. I just feel sometimes people throw money at things. You have to talk to people. You have to have like not the boots of the military, but the hands-on. But, I'll tell you one thing, which, I talked to so many people, and one person was a teacher, and they were in Schenectady in a very poor neighborhood, inner city. And they say, for example, like, we had parent conferences come at night, and 3 out of 25 or whatever it was, 28 kids showed up. It's like they're single families. It's like they're born with 2.5 strikes. I wouldn't even say 2 strikes, 2.5 strikes against them. They're not only poor, which is obviously, they don't come to school with a breakfast. They come with one parent, and, the neighborhood is terrible. They see drugs all around them. I don't know how to overcome that.
No,
I would like...
The other thing that you mentioned was that 3 out of 25 were brave enough to show up because it's a bad neighborhood at night. So maybe that's for their safety. They didn't want to come out at night.
Right.
Well, maybe if they had video conferencing, and they were able, because every home has a computer now of some sort. If you were able to interact via computer, yeah, absolutely.
Really are.
And you could, somehow engage the parents that way without them having to fear.
Well, let me attempt to address that,
Sure.
that concern. And I understand that the complexity of getting parental engagement is one of the most complicated things that we can do, particularly when you're talking about generational poverty, right? When you're talking about generational poverty, when you're talking about poverty, who establishes the hidden pathways of communication, the rules as they were, for engagement?
Yeah.
Middle class. Middle class. Let me finish.
Sure.
Right.
Yes,
So the terminology, the language, the rules, and everything else. That's one thing. You're talking about generational poverty, and if somebody is engaged in generational poverty, they maybe have to work 2 jobs. Maybe they have to work 3 part-time jobs. There's this national push to try and create livable wages.
That's right.
Right. And so, but if at the moment that does not exist, that is the hope. That is the journey we're on. We're trying to create a livable wage for our young people and for their parents to have. If they had a livable wage, maybe they would be able to have free time in the evening to attend a conference. If the understanding of the school and the city and the government and the state and the country had an understanding of how difficult it was, they would then establish some other methodologies. You suggest an interesting one, which is using video conferencing. Well, of course, some homes have computers. Some homes have Wi-Fi capability. Not all homes are connected to computers. Not all homes can afford cable service to be able to then access the cable instruction or to be able to utilize that kind of teleconferencing. And plus you have to learn how to use it. Who's going to teach them? So the most difficult thing we have to do, and which is why we have tried to make sure that our conversations are directly with parents, with children, so that we can actually hear what they have to say. That's why we've held over 7 town hall meetings in this community at every single library. We held the first one here,
Washington
upstairs.
Avenue Library.
Yes, and then we held one at Arbor Hill. We've held one at Howe.
Sure.
We've held
Pine
one at the
Hills.
North Albany VFW.
Pine Hills also?
And Pine Hills, yes. We've tried to go, and when we've not been able to pull them in, we've gone to places like I've gone to the Alliance for Positive Health, which is on Broadway, et cetera, et cetera. So we're actually doing outreach so that we can actually reach parents and talk to parents. I've gone to church Bible studies. I'll come to a synagogue, and I'll go to a mosque. We're prepared to talk to all families and all communities, because it's important that we all get engaged, because these are our children. They're not somebody else's child.
Right.
These are the children that are going to grow up and lead this nation, one way or the other. The demographics of this nation are changing significantly. Should we be afraid of that? No, we should be welcoming that.
But
we should be embracing that change in demographics.
In this day and age, when kids are not fed, well, and they're not educated to the maximum, they all seem to have either expensive sneakers or they seem to have a cell phone. And it's priorities for them. When you look around in the schools, everyone seems to have a cell phone, or you look at their sneakers and they're not $50 or $40 sneakers, they're $100 and something sneakers.
I would challenge that every child.
Well, of course, because you could find 2 or 3 with every example, But you know, so
Are,
let me
are,
ask
the,
you.
are there some priorities that are not appropriate? One
Okay.
can always argue that.
So let me mention one other thing, because I always say this about education. It's a 3-leg stool, and you're only as strong as your weakest leg.
Of course.
You have P plus P plus P, parents, peers, and professionals. And when one of those 3 fail, that's where the stool crumbles.
And who's failing in this?
And
Who are you saying is failing?
well, I don't say who's failing because everyone has their own. If a kid gets involved with the wrong peers, the drug culture, you know, that's who's failing in that individual kid. If you don't have the parental oversight, that's what's the weakest link. And if you don't have the proper professionals and the teachers and superintendents and principals are not watching carefully, then that's the weakest link.
Right.
So you have P and P and P, and those 3 have to be the strongest in order for these kids to rise up. There's not one solution.
No.
And that's what I've been advocating for a long time.
I would take it a step further.
You have a 4th P?
No, I don't.
Oh, okay.
Well, yes, prosperity.
Okay.
Right? If we only invest in the school that's in poverty communities, and we're only investing in the school and not investing in the community around the school,
Okay.
not creating entrepreneurial opportunities around the school, employment opportunities around the school, reducing violence and crime around the school, the child may be in Eden for those first hours of the day when they're in school. They may get a breakfast, they may get a lunch, they may get fed. They may get fed both physically, spiritually, and intellectually. But if they then go to a place in which none of that is being supported, because there are no jobs, because there is no prosperity in the community, then the impact of 16 hours outweighs the impact of 8 hours. So I would argue that there is an addition for us to do, which is making sure that our community that surrounds these schools are supported and encouraged to grow just as much as we encourage the school to grow. It has to be a holistic approach to the changing of what we're doing in cities across the nation.
You know, Pedro, you know, you're an
Well said,
interesting
well said.
person.
Thank
You're
you.
right,
Thank you.
100%. You're on the ball, and I'll give you, again, I said kudos to everything you're doing. Tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into this.
Well, without being too personal, well, I'll be frank. I'll be frank.
Yes.
And I don't mean by the name.
And you could
Yeah.
be Pedro, too.
I can be,
Pedro.
yes, yes. I grew up poor. I can remember at the end of the month there would be white rice and ketchup served to me. I know my mother went hungry to feed me, right? My father left when I was young, so I wasn't raised by 2 parents. I was raised by 1 parent. In that same household, I had a brother. He didn't make it out of the Lower East Side. He made choices that caused his death. I made it out of the Lower East Side, out of a community that's much like Arbor Hill or Hamilton Hill here in the northern part of the state, you know. And the reason I made it out was because of gentlemen like you. Because adults decided that they saw something in me, and I was ready to hear it, that helped guide me. So it was because someone cared for me, an adult cared for me, an adult engaged me, that I found my way out of poverty. So part of the reason that I'm here is because I have a debt to pay. And that debt is to not just the kids that have not made it out, like my brother, but to all those children who might have an opportunity to grow if an adult would reach out to them. If an adult would say, you are of value, I value your life, I value your potentiality. And all I want to do is help you decide what it is you want to do with your life. Imagine if we took and allowed children to take an entrepreneurial approach to their own education. Imagine if that entrepreneurial approach was supported by the schools. Imagine if businesses then took that entrepreneurial approach in terms of its new hirees. What would that mean to the bottom line of those companies? What would that mean to the bottom line of this country if every child now was supported in that way so that they could fulfill, so that we can create Einsteins, Mozarts, Michael Jordans, you know, all these creative, incredible human beings that are on this, that we've known in the history of our existence as human beings, that have helped move the human agenda forward in terms of enlightenment, in terms of us understanding awe.
It's excellent.
Wow.
That's what I'm hoping for.
Now, the Lower East Side has been traditionally known as, well, now it's known as a melting pot, but traditionally it's been known as a Jewish community.
When I grew
Way
up,
back.
when I grew up in the Lower East Side, the population was Latino, African American, and Jewish,
Okay.
as well as Chinese, right? And in fact, the rabbi and I were talking about first of all, my last name is from the Old Testament, so it's basically a Jewish name. I engaged in many activities and understood part of the human diaspora, right? The Sephardic Jews coming to America. I myself am not Jewish. I cannot be because my mother was not.
Okay.
Right. So and although I could convert,
Right.
I don't choose to. But
Are you practicing Catholic or
I'm
Baptist?
I'm a practicing awe.
Awe.
I believe that there's something greater than myself. I don't want to define it because I think our brains are too limited in terms of understanding to attempt to define the divine.
And Rabbi Simon would probably say, not yet. You're
No,
always
it's good.
striving for it.
Mark,
so
don't
that's
put words in my
No,
mouth.
I'm saying you probably would say. I'm
No, on the
saying-
contrary, really, it's a very good Jewish view because there's one God who created the heavens and the earth, and that's really, if that's what you're saying, then that really is on the mark with Judaism.
And you
Defined with some kind of.
And you always strive to learn what the.
Yeah.
Well,
that's what the learning the
Maybe you look
Gemara.
back and you have some Jewish blood in you.
Well, you know
Maybe.
what? I have done some DNA analysis of myself. I'm an Afro-Caribbean Taino Indian with a Spanish surname. You know what that makes me?
No, what?
Puerto Rican.
Puerto Rican.
That's a good one.
And were you born in Lower East Side?
Yes. Yes, I was
Well,
born
what
and
do you
raised
do
on the
if you
Lower
have
East
for
Side.
a career? That's also important.
I worked for the New York State Police for 30 years.
That's excellent.
I started as a trooper and ended up being a statewide commander as the interim superintendent a couple of times.
Really?
Yes, commanding the over 5,000 personnel and $500 million budget. I retired in 2010, but throughout my career I was engaged in this work because I always understood that my role was to be a police officer for social justice, not simply law and order. And what I mean by that is that police officers are public servants. We are supposed to be serving people. And if we're doing that job properly, then we have to understand that there are some times when we are supposed to be engaging in social justice issues. We're supposed to be protecting civil rights. The fact of the matter is that police officers are a constitutional officer. Now, it's not often thought that way. But where the rubber meets the road is in that interchange, in that intersection between the police officer and the citizen they're encountering. That's either where you're going to be effectually violating somebody's Fourth Amendment rights or supporting their Fourth Amendment rights, where you're going to be either violating their First Amendment rights or supporting their First Amendment rights. You're either going to be violating the Eighth Amendment or not, cruel and unusual punishment piece, yes, right? So from my perspective, a police officer's role is really a very critical role. We do not understand the difficulty of being a police officer. And I frankly, because I grew up in New York City, because I understood how New York City police officers at that time behaved, I always had this concern about police. I grew out of that, having become a trooper. But I never forgot how I was treated and made sure that I never treated anybody other than as a citizen with the presumption of innocence, even if I observed them commit the crime. Why? Because that's the Constitution. And so my job was to accuse and bring them to justice. The judge and the defense attorney were to challenge me. I was okay with that.
Yeah, sure.
Right? Because that's the system. We have an adversarial judicial system, and that's okay. I'm all right with that. That's fine. That's what we should have. We should have a debate about justice all the time. We should always be looking at justice. That's what MBSK is about. It's about equitably treating our children and making sure that we treat them with justice. That's why I've never given up on that, and I've always been engaged in that. And my transition from being a police officer to doing this kind of work was seamless because that has been my core value.
And go ahead.
Excellent. I just think, it's very interesting you say that. I think it's very important because you think it's diametrically opposed. Police officers tough and mean and ready to beat up people and, a social person, they're to help, but you're just bridging the gap, which is incredible. I think that's really
We
very
call them
important.
community engagement officers now.
Yes, that's the term, but community policing has been around for a long time.
Yeah.
Now the question always comes down to this. Police officers are supposed to be our shield between good and evil. There are evil people. There is evil.
Sure.
It exists. I've seen it. But there's also folks that make stupid choices. Are they evil, inherently evil? No, they just made some bad choices, right? And should I then condemn them for the rest of their lives because they made one bad choice, especially if that choice was when they were young? When we all know, we're all brain science now demonstrates that human brains are not formed until fully formed until we're in our mid-20s, and for males, I'm sorry, brothers, until our mid-30s, right? So I'm fortunate. I'm twice beyond my mid-30s.
How old are you?
I already said it. You can figure it out.
Twice beyond my mid-30s.
Yes. So my brain is more fully formed, but yet it's still pliable, and I hope it's
so young. You really
You're very
do.
kind.
No,
I'm
I'm
glad I
serious.
paid you $100.
No, I am serious. I am stunned. I never would have, when I met you before, I just never would have thought that.
Yeah.
You're in good shape. That's
Thank
good.
you. You're very
Okay.
kind. You're
But,
very kind.
when you were a trooper, who was the police superintendent?
I worked for several superintendents. The first superintendent I worked for was Keneally. Then thereafter, it was Chesworth, and then it was Constantine, and then it was.
And Tom Constantine was a generous
Yes,
man.
yeah.
He was so wonderful.
Then it was McMahon,
Okay.
and then I worked for Bennett, and I finally, at my end of my career, I worked for the first African American superintendent, Harry Corbett.
Right.
And he and I became the first two men of color to lead the state police.
Wow. So that's where I might have seen you, because I was covering the state police during those times.
yes.
Maybe you were in jail, Marco.
Oh, no.
Just joking.
I was in the audience. And
All right. He's our president.
when Tom Constantine was absolutely, I thought, the standard. Do you still stay in touch with Wayne Bennett, because he's just over in Schenectady?
No, I don't see him that often. I stay in touch with former Superintendent Corbett.
Yeah?
Because we had worked together for many years in the
More
state
of a
police.
friendship than...
Yes, and it became more of a friendship than a
Or
boss
employee,
employee.
yeah, right.
I have respect for all of the superintendents that I worked for, so it's the state police is an incredible organization. It has its challenges. It had its challenges. It continues to have its challenges, and I'm not afraid to speak to those challenges. But I'm also extremely proud of my career and will defend when they're doing correctly, any police agency, when it's doing its job correctly, I will be among the first to defend them. When they're not doing their job correctly, I will be the first to say, you're not doing your job correctly.
Now, I don't mean to ask this in your role of any official role, okay? But because it might be a policy thing and I don't want to get it confused. Are you in favor of raise the age?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Could you explain to our audience how you interpret raise the
New
age?
York State is one of the only one of two states left in the nation in which a 16 and a 17-year-old can be charged as adults and then sent to adult prison if convicted. All brain research has demonstrated that human beings' brains do not fully form, and therefore our frontal lobes, that part of of our brain that reasons, is not fully formed until we're much, much older. You add to that poverty that may restrict the development of the brain. You add to that adverse childhood experiences, which may impact the brain development, and that maturity of the brain may take even longer. And yet we're saying that a 17 and a 16-year-old making a bad decision, should they be punished? Yes. Should they be held accountable? Yes. But as an adult, I don't think so. I think we should raise the age. I think we should be looking at rehabilitation of young people.
So where should the 16 and 17-year-olds go?
Well,
juvenile-
there should be educational services. There should be detention centers for youth.
Right, but if they go to prison, what type of a prison should they go to?
It should be a youth prison as opposed to an adult prison.
They actually, I know, because I have one of my 10 jobs is, I do visit prisons, and the Hudson they have for just specifically for 16, 17-year-olds. It's a nice place. So I guess they're leaning towards that. Little by little, maybe not exactly what you're saying to make them totally
In the
adult.
absence of the legislature not passing this.
There are
raise the-
initiatives.
Then there are initiatives, but the governor took executive action to have that Hudson Correctional Facility, Brookwood, I think it is.
Yes, and there are initiatives going on. This city is very progressive with respect to its dealings in terms of police engagement and criminal justice here. There are other cities that are not as progressive.
Right.
We have the LEAD program here in the city of Albany. We also have the district attorneys, the Youth Felony Diversion Board, of which I'm the co-chair of. So attempting to deal with that, not waiting for the legislation, but taking, police have discretion, which is important. The district attorneys have discretion. Judges are beginning to have discretion because the mandatory minimums are now being changed. You know, the Rockefeller laws are being changed. That provides discretion. And so with that discretion, judges and the criminal justice system can make some decisions with respect to how is this young person going to be held accountable for their actions, and how are we going to change that behavior so that they do not continue to make bad mistakes.
A quick question, a quick answer, hopefully. Brendan Cox, the Albany Police Chief, and David Soares, the Albany County DA, are they doing a good job, or what sort of a job are they doing in your view?
I think they're headed in the right direction.
So they get pluses, or
as
just
far-
mid-level, or
No, I have a lot of respect for both of them.
they're good?
I don't like using adjectives like good because that doesn't.
I know, well, that's why I'm
yeah.
hesitating, and I'm not really
Yeah,
finishing
so
the word.
I believe that they are working very, very hard in trying to make sure that their job is being done equitably, that they understand social justice
So
issues.
you're not critical of them?
If I need to be critical of them, I will be.
Okay, but right now you're...
But at this juncture,
You're good.
I think
Yeah.
I think what we need to do is work with them
Okay.
to make sure that they do even a better job.
Okay.
We need to work with every one of our governmental entities to do a better job, because we're not perfect yet. You know, the preamble of the Constitution talks about a more perfect union.
Yeah.
That's what every day we should be striving for, and every single one of us, every single citizen should be working towards a more perfect
you
union.
come to the table with a certain heightened level of credibility, and that's why, because of your background, and that's why I ask you those questions. So.
Pedro,
Did
we're
I
out
answer
of
your
time.
question
Yes.
adequately?
Good enough.
Okay.
Pedro, we're out of time. You're doing
Okay.
a great job. So, like I said before, kudos to you that you're helping the community with the right there and talking to them face to face, not just making laws or making hyperboles. They're nice speeches. You're right there. So continue the good work. Be successful. Of course, we're all pushing for you, and do it with good health.
Continued
Thank you.
success, yes,
And
Pedro.
thank you very much.
Continued success.
And Rabbi, I really do appreciate the work you're doing with trying to provide second chances when you're working in your prison ministry. I think that's awesome. That's important that we do that, and that we bring spirituality and faith to our young people and to adults that have made a mistake. And sir, thank you very much for reporting adequately and accurately what's going on
yes.
in the city of Albany.
Thank you.
Thank you.